there's so many layers to this because I also recognized really quickly in the world, not just in my family dynamic, but the world, but men were more respected. And so I shut down a lot of my feminine aspects because I wanted to be respected in the world. I wanted to be successful. And if I wanted to get ahead, I felt like I had to be more like a man in many different ways, like act like a man, do all this stuff. So I really disowned the feminine aspect of my nature. And we all have a feminine and masculine aspect. For me, my default was my masculine energy. I was much more comfortable being in that area, and being vulnerable was just not safe at all. I was risking ridicule. I was risking being looked at as weak. And I couldn't have any of that in my life. And so, of course, not allowing that part of me to be expressed or have a place in my life ended up contributing to the black spots on my cervix.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about courage, vulnerability, and healing. I'm delighted to welcome Nicole Frolick. Nicole is an author, speaker, healer, life coach, and the founder of Alchemy Academy. You can reach Nicole at her websites and on social media, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, Nicole. I'm so glad that you could join me today.
Thank you, Linda, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm so excited for this conversation. And in preparation, I watched some of your raw and real, the first video,
Oh,
and I was just so delighted and so impressed with the vulnerability that you shared. You talked about the scare of finding some black spots on the cervix and some fear that maybe it might be cancer, and then more fear that maybe that means you might not be able to realize your dream of becoming a mother. And as you talked about these things, I thought, man, anyone can relate to this, even if those are not the challenges that they're facing, because you opened yourself up and allowed yourself to share. And I was thinking when you started, one of the things that actually impressed me most was you said, I'm scared. I'm scared to do this. I'm scared to share this because I don't feel emotionally safe. So I'm wondering, is it okay if we start here?
oh yeah, let's jump into it.
Of vulnerability. And I would love to hear some of your story and the happy ending, because you did get some healing with that, which is
Yes.
big. But why is it so important for starting our healing journey to be vulnerable?
Oh gosh, there's so much we can dive into here. For me in particular, it was important because I grew up in a family that didn't really allow you to express your emotions. If you cried, you were made fun of. And so all of that part of me was really shut down. Plus, even though my mother, she loves me so much and she was an amazing mother in so many ways, but I didn't get the nurturing, the physical component of being held, I think, the way I needed to be held, or feeling safe enough to explore some of my emotions because I was a firstborn. And so, I was having to take care of my sisters and my younger brother. And so I kind of went into this kind of instant adult mode. And so for me, sharing my emotions, I realized that if I were, there's so many layers to this because I also recognized really quickly in the world, not just in my family dynamic, but the world, but men were more respected. And so I shut down a lot of my feminine aspects because I wanted to be respected in the world. I wanted to be successful. And if I wanted to get ahead, I felt like I had to be more like a man in many different ways, like act like a man, do all this stuff. So I really disowned the feminine aspect of my nature. And we all have a feminine and masculine aspect. For me, my default was my masculine energy. I was much more comfortable being in that area, and being vulnerable was just not safe at all. I was risking ridicule. I was risking being looked at as weak. And I couldn't have any of that in my life. And so, of course, not allowing that part of me to be expressed or have a place in my life ended up contributing to the black spots on my cervix. And I don't know if a lot of women realize this, but anytime we have reproductive issues, a lot of it is because there's a denial of our own feminine energy or a repression within our own feminine energy, being a woman, our own relationship to being a woman. And so I had to really look at that. And I had a very long healing journey with that. But the black spots actually came much later into that healing journey. It's not like I hadn't already started that healing journey. I started that healing journey when I was 31. And these black spots came around the age of 41, 42, I believe. And I realized too that sometimes the things that we avoid in our life out of fear, for whatever reason that we may avoid them, are actually where our treasure in this life lies, maybe where our gifts lie as well. And being able to express myself and express something that was coming up as a result of these black spots, which was also, once I healed those black spots, was sexual abuse when I was a child, and didn't have any recollection of that prior to the healing of the black spots. And so once I healed one thing, I was able to go even deeper into something else. And that's what really brought forward that Raw and Real series that you talked about. And I realized I have to start sharing. I have to share my emotions. I have to share all of this, because in the healing, energetically, in our energetic field, we have chakras, energy centers. And the sacral chakra, which is where a lot of our reproductive, as a woman, a lot of our reproductive organs are, that is tied to one, the mother wound, which can relate to maybe not having your emotions shared, or not being able to express, not being allowed to have certain emotions, but also a suppression of the child within, because that also houses the inner child, the sacral chakra. And so there's so much here we could unpack, but
I know this
yeah.
is so incredible, and all the information you've given, I'm just like, oh, I love this. Oh, and I love that. Oh, and I love this. So, if it is it okay before we continue
Yeah,
on, if
no, jump
I
in.
unpack a little bit about some of the things that you talked about, and that is, it's one of the things is, as we're growing up, these inner child, and I know we're going to continue about that, where it comes from. And then it can come from, and you've talked about just having parents who are doing their best,
Mhm.
and you know they're human, and you don't get all the love that you need, you don't get all the things you need. There's a lot of responsibility because of your position in the family. And then on the other end, there are things that are more apparent from anyone who sees, and that's when you're experiencing abuse, like sexual abuse or physical abuse, these kinds of things. And it can come from either source, and in your case it sounds like from both,
Mhm.
because we're raised by fallible humans who do their best and make mistakes.
And had their own unhealed wounds that they didn't even realize. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that continues. And then you also talked about feminine energy and masculine energy, and about being safe, about, is it okay for me to share these things? Is it okay? We have these stories in our head. It's not safe. I am not allowed to express my feelings. I am not allowed to talk about these things. I'm going to be made fun of. I'm going to be mocked. I'm going to be shut down. So now I'm going to, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to stay quiet. And I think we naturally continue the patterns that we created as children, and they will carry us through our whole lives unless we stop, become aware of them, and then have that chance to heal. And I loved how you mentioned that these things that are our weaknesses, these things that are our challenges, can also be those same things that bring the greatest gifts. And that is kind of magical. And it's
Mhm.
fair. Don't you think it's fair that those things that were hard, those things that we went through, can be something to heal and to grow from? So Wow. All right. So where do you want to go next? Do you want to continue?
I'd love to just point out why I shared with my audience this journey live on YouTube live. Like, it was important for me to not just record it. I wanted to be in the moment. I wanted to know there were people in the live chat there, because for a few different reasons. It was so important for me, especially as a firstborn and as someone who took on an adult role as a child, very young. Um, Everyone was always leaning on me. And I needed to know that I could lean on someone in the chat, knowing that there was someone on the other end listening to me and receiving what I was sharing. And so it was vulnerability. There's so much that we can become vulnerable just with our own selves, whether it's we're writing in our journal, we're looking in the mirror and, getting very honest with ourselves. But to really do it with people um, who are on the receiving end of our vulnerability is really important. And I think for me, the lesson was to learn that I can actually have deeper connections with people and help people more if I allow myself to be helped and held. And these are all the things I was missing as a child. I didn't get to be held. I wasn't told you can express this. I wasn't given the space or time to do that. If I wasn't going to be ridiculed in this chat, I knew that the people that were coming up were supporting me. And so using that space to explore my own vulnerability, but also to show this is what vulnerability looks like. It's really messy. It's really messy. It's scary. And like, I'm crying, I'm blowing my nose. Like, it's just messy. And that's okay. And I think too, what was important for me um was I want people to see what the journey really looks like. Oftentimes we talk about our journey when we're already through on the other side, and it seems like, oh yeah, there's the hero, they did it. And but the actual journey, being in the moment, I thought was really special to share. And I knew that some people might find it really uncomfortable for me to talk about the nature of some of the issues I was sharing, but I thought, that's their choice to decide if they want to listen or not listen. And it's okay either way. But for me, I was like, I like to go deep into this stuff and I want to show it all. I want to show what it really looks like and how scary it actually is to face these things. And what was so beautiful, I did not anticipate after all of that, was the result was I had so many people reach out to me, people who had been sexually abused as well and wanted me to help them heal their inner child from that, which was beautiful. That was something I just didn't even anticipate when I was doing that. But then it also, for those who didn't have that experience, the connection of the vulnerability, I think we're missing the boat on as human beings in our relationships, just in general, is that when we start to share parts of us that we feel are ugly or we feel are messy and not perfect, and someone might judge us or make fun of us, when we start to really share those parts, it creates a permission slip for someone else to go there themselves. And I think deep down, all of us are looking for a permission slip to go deeper into our own vulnerabilities and share the parts of us that we're so scared to share. And then what happens is there's a relatability, because we all have these things that we can relate on at that level. And now there's a deeper connection. So I found that my relationship with my existing clients, deepened, and they trusted me more. And as a result, I also gained more clients because if they were on the fence of working with me, that kind of also helped them feel more secure. Because to go into these places of healing, there has to be a level of security and safety and trust with the person you're sharing and opening up to. And I think that,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry that you mentioned that, because I think that that's important as we're opening up and as we are vulnerable, sharing those parts of ourselves that we are uncomfortable sharing. I loved how you brought up that your audience, you had a kind of a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
You had some people in there that you knew would accept you and that would support you and that would love you and that would hold you. And I think that that matters, because you mentioned also that there are people who don't don't accept, and on the other end might even mock or um, just make things very miserable for us. So I think that our when we open up, that we don't have to open up to everyone. We can open up to someone who feels safe,
Mm.
especially when we're getting started. That finding a safe place. And then you mentioned that you were at that spot where I know I have some people who can support me, who can love me, who can hold me. And I know that there are other people who won't. But I'm in a place right now where I'm okay with that, and that they can choose their response. That is not going to define me, or hopefully not affect too much, but that I can move forward and doing that. So that was awesome. And then the results that you shared, that people relate to you. I felt the same way when I watched it. I thought, oh, I feel like Nicole and I could be friends. I
Yeah.
feel I felt this way before. I understand this. I understand that. And it made you, I don't know, real. You were real.
It's
So
so interesting you say that, because one thing that my younger sister taught me that I don't even know if to this day she even realizes it, but because throughout my whole life I put on this persona of I've got it all together. I'm your problem solver. You got a problem, you come to me, I'll solve it for you, I'll fix it, I'll make it all better. Like that was who I was. That was my role in the family. Believe it or not, that was actually my role. And so I just took that into life, and no one ever saw my weaknesses. No one ever saw when I was down. No one ever saw when I was hurting. Like I hid all of that because in my eyes, or what I felt deep down, is that no one wanted to see it. And so when, later in life, I think it was like my late 30s or early 40s, so somewhere close to this time frame, my sister and I had had a falling out, a misunderstanding. And finally, after months and months of not really kind of talking, we got together, and I kind of opened up to her my real feelings. And I was crying, and I was emotional. And she never really sees that part of me ever. And she was just so relieved. The relief on her face was like, Nicole, like, why don't you ever share this side of you? Like, now you feel human to me. Like, I actually feel like you're a human to me. Whereas before, I wasn't humanized. I was just like this, almost like maybe a robot of like, don't worry, I got it. Like, and so there was no relatability. And so she couldn't connect with me. And so it was, and I realized, oh, that's like, I'm making it hard for people to connect with me, which means we can't have that deeper relationship that I crave. I love the deeper relationships. And so it was eye-opening for me.
what an interesting connection. When you talk about the idea of I'm not being loved, I'm not being received, I'm not being held. And I love that term, just held, whether it's physical or emotional. And then to say, they didn't think I needed that.
Mhm.
They couldn't even see that that was, I mean, I've got
I
it
can't
together.
blame them
Good to
either.
go.
I did very well. I did
And
very
you
well of
did
putting on
very,
the,
very well.
yeah.
Of holding it together and being
Mhm.
the problem solver. And I find it interesting that we're trying to do good and we're trying to be good, right?
Mhm.
This is my role. I'm trying to do a good job in my role. My role is I'm the problem solver. I am the go-to person, and I'm supposed to be strong. And so we try to fulfill that role. And then it takes some rethinking of what is it to do good and be good. Can I do good and be good if I'm vulnerable? Am I still being good if I'm not following this model that I've set up for myself? And to kind of expand, because I think our go-to for most of us, we're trying to do what we think we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't know, I just think we need to open up our awareness a little bit, that it might be more than what you originally thought it was.
Yes. Yes. And we all have this program. A lot of us, not, I shouldn't say all, but many of us have this program of, I just want to be a good girl. I just want to be a good guy, like, and just do the right thing. And if I'm good, people will like me more. And it's just this people pleaser energy. And, I had to really let go of a lot of that pressure that I was putting on myself that was really in impeding a lot of my relationships, but also my growth, because there were so many areas that I, even to this day, I'm needing to learn to lean on others to be better. And and coming from this mentality my whole life of like, if I want to be, I just have to keep, it's me. Everything's on my shoulders and everything's my responsibility. And someone else helps me, they're just going to get in the way, or they're not going to do it the way I want them to do it. And it's just what I've learned, especially even in my business now. I just hosted a retreat here in Colorado, a big healing retreat. And I had a couple people helping me with it, because there's no way I could have held space for that many people. And it was a big healing moment for me, because I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not doing it alone. And I have the right support, and they're actually making me stronger for it. And it was just this, oh, such a liberating feeling. So there's been such a journey of really learning to, through the vulnerability, also learning to accept where my faults and my weaknesses are. And doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means, hey, you can use some support. This is an opportunity for me to ask for support, to ask for help, and to let people hold me. And yeah, it's just this incredible life journey that I think a lot of people can relate to, that it has a lot of rewards when we learn to surrender to the things that we're so scared to surrender to.
And that's magical. And
Mhm.
that letting go. And it's hard. We cling to things like, the whole world is going to fall apart because I know it's right here on my shoulder and I've been carrying it all by myself. And if I change anything, it feels like my whole world is going to collapse. And what you're describing is, no, actually, it didn't collapse. It got better. And that takes a lot of bravery to believe that, because I mean, you said it, but will it work for me too? That kind of thing. And I think as we talk about it, it helps us to be able to recognize, oh, you felt that way. Oh, this is what you did. And these were your results. I wonder. And I think as we talk, then the more that I loved how you talked before that we need a permission slip. It gives that permission that there's some hope, that things
Mhm.
can be a little different than the way that they've been.
Yeah. And the permission slip is really important in this specific area that we're talking about, because the sacral chakra, the second chakra, which houses our feelings, right? That's responsible for all of our feelings. It's the inner child need. There is the need to have permission or be allowed. And so yes, it would be naturally tied to this idea of, I am allowed to be vulnerable. I am allowed to share these feelings, no matter how ugly or messy or wrong society may tell me they are, or my parents told me they are, or whatever. It's like it's another person's vulnerability is that permission slip that the little boy or little girl within each of us needs to be able to express our own emotions.
And that permission, because we're talking about kind of an inner child. When you're a child, you do need permission. And the permission we're expecting is from adults, either our
Mm-hmm.
parents, our teachers, or whoever. And then as we become the adult, it's somehow we're still seeking that permission and not recognizing that we can be the ones to give ourselves the permission. And I had a quote here from Alice Little that I just love. It says, as traumatized children, we always dream that someone would come and save us. We never dream that it would, in fact, be ourselves as adults. And I think that that is the opportunity that all of us have, is if we felt, if it was abuse and we needed to be saved, or neglect of some kind, that now we can go back and say, okay, well, I'm going to be the one who's going to help this little child that's me to be able to be seen and heard and loved and protected. And so it's almost like we get a second chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is a big part of the work of the inner child, is the reparenting of being the parent that you needed back then, and becoming that parent to you, not just in communication with your own inner child through your own healing journey, but also, just in your day-to-day activities of like really showing up for yourself in that way, so that you then create this field of energy around you, a frequency that becomes a signature match for that which you need in your adult life to be supported by. So I found that the more I allowed myself to be supported in this journey of healing, because I was supporting my inner child, because I was finally listening to her and finally doing that, then all of a sudden people actually were able to show up, because now it's a frequency match, like there's this energetic, they say like attracts like. So it naturally is magnetized to you. It's allowed.
I would love will you elaborate on that a little more? How you said when we are in that place where we can accept the help, then the help will come.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would love to hear a little bit
Yeah.
more.
So, okay. So it's from an energetic perspective, like attracts like. And so we will always attract things to us that reinforce the narrative we're already carrying, right? Because we want it to be true. And so if you have this narrative within your journey where you're now like, that you need to be supported, that one of your wounds was no one had my back. I always had to do things for myself. No one was there for me. I was always there for everyone else. Well, then you're going to have to start being there for yourself. And the first place to start is with your inner child. And so you start creating that frequency of show and the patterns that get embedded in your subconscious mind as you do this repetitively, of showing up for that little girl or that little boy inside of you. And you do that through checking in with them and asking them, what are your needs today? And you might say like, oh, how does this make you feel? And you start listening so that they feel heard and seen and supported in some way, like they actually matter. And then you start making yourself a priority in just your day-to-day activities. Instead of waiting till the end of the day to do the thing for you, you may do it at the beginning of the day. And now all of a sudden you're creating this energy signature in your field, like I'm a priority. And so now people are going to start showing up that actually want to make you a priority. And so it's this thing where that which you do for yourself is now able to show up because you're a signature match. And that match is invited in because you're no longer repelling it. Before, I was repelling anyone knowing that I had any pain or hurt. So no one wanted to know about my pain because I didn't want anyone to know about my pain deep down. And so
Isn't
naturally, yeah, the support doesn't come in.
that the first person that we need to support us is us?
Mm-hmm.
It's ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that showing up for ourselves, showing up for that inner child, checking in. How do you feel? What do you need? And then taking care of our needs first. Isn't that magical?
Mm-hmm. It
It,
is. It's so well
so,
orchestrated.
so if anyone is seeking a permission slip to take care of themselves, Nicole and I, right here, right now, are offering a permission slip. Yes, you can take care of yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
it will make everything a little bit better.
Yeah. And the people that you really need to show up for you will start showing up for you.
Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just you. You're just the first in line,
Yeah.
and the line shows up.
Yes. You show everyone where the lines begins. Take a number.
Wow, that's so beautiful and transformational in the
Mm-hmm.
way that not only the way that you see things, but in the way that the world shows up for you. Because I think it matters for people to understand that the narratives that we have are not just in our heads, they are manifest in our experiences. When we feel like no one shows up for me, it's probably because no one shows up for me. But then if we peel back a little bit and ask, why? What part did I play in this?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can start to have a different experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. And so it's everything comes full circle, and it always starts with us and ends with us. But yeah, it's been such a beautiful journey. I find the healing journey in itself is the beauty is really in the mess. And we think the beauty is in the end goal and like what it looks like as the diamond, the final diamond that's been, you know, really kind of through all the compression and pressure put on that coal, that we finally get the diamond. But it's the pressure, it's the journey, it's all of that that really is what is beautiful. And I think that was another major lesson for me earlier on in my life, around 31, was recognizing to see the beauty in that darkness, the beauty in all the places that I thought weren't beautiful at all, and learning to actually accept them as beautiful. And when you do, again, if you more accepting you become of yourself, the more people are able to be in acceptance of you.
I would love to elaborate a little bit more on the beauty is in the mess, because I think like 99.9% of us are in a mess. And we're waiting to be happy. We're waiting to feel love. We're waiting for that. We're thinking, okay, as soon as this mess is done, then I'm going to feel awesome. Then everything is going to go my way. And if you're suggesting that this part right here, right now, is also beautiful, well, that gives me some hope, because that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's why they say no mud, no lotus. Right. And so a lot of the light is found in your darkness. It's found in the mess. You wouldn't even know that it exists if you weren't forced to go into the darkness and turn the light switch on, you know? And here's the beautiful thing about darkness: the darker, the higher the, or I should say, the more potent the darkness is, the higher its own capacity becomes to hold more light. So when something isn't that dark, you don't get to see that much. The light is just, it's not that the contrast isn't really there. And so when you do, though, have that really pure darkness that you're looking at, or that mess, that ugliness, that's actually creating a higher capacity to hold more light. And so when you realize that, it's really the darkness, it's something that I think so many of us avoid and we are ashamed of. But my darkness has given me so many of my gifts that I use to help others. It has also provided me a pathway in my life that I didn't even know existed and would bring me so much joy. It's like, even when I look at just, even I think of the darkness of being abused as a child sexually, it gave me the gift of learning to forgive my abuser, who I knew I could tell he was also abused as a child. Um, but to also understand the power of forgiveness. So through me facing my own darkness, and again, it wasn't so much about setting him free, but it was about setting myself free from the darkness that I was shackled to, and didn't even know it, because I had compartmentalized it and put it in this really dark place deep into the recesses of my own unconscious mind, that there is no way I could even be aware of it, but it was always working in the background and growing roots and infiltrating my life choices in ways that I had no comprehension of until I faced it. And learning to forgive, just even the pathway of forgiveness was so profoundly beautiful to what it means to let go, what it means to understand the dark journey of another and it being entangled with yours, and the lessons that it provided me, because now I have the capacity to empathize and understand what someone who needs my help to go through that healing process. I can hold their hand and walk them through that process and help more people heal from this, or bring more awareness to the prevalence of this happening with our younger generation that I don't think is talked about so much. And so that all, like, the power and the potency that lives in our own darkness is just waiting for us to bring our courage that you talk about on your podcast, to bring our courage and turn the light switch on and let our light be held in that. And then also recognizing the gratitude that we have for the role that the darkness plays.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for bringing up about forgiveness and what that means. that it is not for the person who hurt you, that it is for me. It's for the person that was hurt. And it is about being free. And I loved that mental picture that you drew for me about something dark. I can just see a seed inside of me growing roots and growing branches. And that darkness can pervade every part of me. Or I can choose to release it and to let it go. And that requires letting it go and not holding on to. Sometimes we want to validate or rather than heal. So recognizing that is where the real healing lies, is in releasing, and that the person who benefits is the one who forgives. And if there's some residual benefit for the person who's forgiven, that's great. But the main purpose is how it helps and heals us.
And this is why compassion is such an important ally in your journey of healing, because the compassion for another isn't possible until you've allowed the depth of that compassion to be honored and given to yourself. And so many of us don't know how to be compassionate with ourselves. And think that's one of the gifts of the inner child, is that when we all think about a child in front of us, whether it might be your own child, someone else's child, like a niece, a nephew, whatever, whoever it might be, there's just this instant empathy and compassion that you have for the child and wanting to nurture them and keep them safe. And so when we work with our own inner child, it's a way of bypassing some of our inability to connect with our own pain. And imagine that little child standing there and being able to start there. You can start to open up the doors of compassion for yourself. And through your ability to have compassion for yourself, you then can see through the other's eyes of what may have been going on with them. But that cannot happen until you first gift yourself with your own compassion. And through that, both of you are set free, which ultimately is the best case scenario. But the other one is usually, it's a byproduct of you setting yourself free. They naturally just are set free.
Wow. And once again, it starts and ends with us. Compassion. We have to be compassionate toward ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. And I love that compassion can then be extended to the other person. It doesn't mean we make excuses for them and say, oh, well, it's because da, 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 da. It's what happened was wrong. But I have compassion for the person and what brought them to this place. And that also can help with that forgiving journey. And that makes all the difference. So, wow, Nicole, this has been amazing. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
All I would say is listen to the inner voice within you that calls. It may be a whisper for many of you, but that whisper carries a lot of potency in not just you being set free from your own shackles that are present in the unconscious mind, but to also guide you towards the path that you're going to be most happiest and live a more fulfilling life that feels more purposeful and has a direction that you feel could be your legacy to leave behind in this world. And so listen to those whispers, don't deny them, because they are going to lead you maybe first into a bit of a darker place, but eventually on the other side, your rebirth will be worth it.
Thank you, Nicole. That's amazing. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by author Haruki Murakami. He said, "What happens when people open their hearts? They get better." Today, I invite our listeners to open their hearts so they can get better. See you next time on Linda's Corner.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free ebooks, and other free resources to help increase happiness, build confidence and self-esteem, strengthen relationships, manage stress, and calm feelings of depression and anxiety. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.